the proceedings of the day, may I request Mr. Anil Rajput, Chairman FICCI Cascade, to please make his formal welcome remarks.
It is my proud privilege to welcome Shri Sadan Pandeyji, Honorable Minister in Charge, Consumer Affairs, Government of West Bengal, Shri Dipankar Arun, Additional Director General, DRI, Kolkata, Ms. Mala Banerjee, President, Federation of Consumer Association, Shri Hem Pandey, former Secretary, Consumer Affairs, Government of India, and think tank member, FICCI Cascade, Shri P.C. Jha, former Chairman, CBIC, and Advisor, FICCI Cascade, Shri Dilip Chanoy, Secretary General, FICCI, distinguished participants and friends. Good afternoon. We are today living in extremely troubled times. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought development activities world over to a screeching halt. The impact on the economies and societies have been massive, and frankly, no one knows when things will begin to truly look up or get back to the pre-COVID days. What we do know is that the reset button has been pressed world over. This is the result of the supply chain disruption, and globalization has now taken a back seat, with nations increasingly looking inwards to fulfill their needs and requirements. Unlike COVID-19, illicit trade has been wreaking havoc on mankind for many decades. It has caused huge damage to economies and societies across the world. Economies have suffered due to tax arbitrage and resulting loss of revenue, while societies have suffered because of illicit trade, negative impact on employment and consumer safety. In addition, it severely dents the morale of the legal manufacturers and creates a far from ideal situation for nations. Illicit trade is the world's largest growing industry, with an estimated size ranging from 350 billion to 3 trillion according to multiple studies. It represents 10% of the global trade. Therefore, it is a fact that no nation or state is immune from illicit trade's detrimental impact. West Bengal is a big state, both in terms of size as well as population. It shares boundaries with 3 countries, Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Nepal. The smugglers and counterfeiters have always been persistent, especially those from Bangladesh and Nepal. It is my worry that with our recent developments in the relationships with Nepal and China, this route is likely to be used by illicit traders in a greater way, using both standards and unconventional tactics. Therefore, increased vigil by enforcement agencies is required today more than ever before. The role played by enforcement agencies in the state of West Bengal is second to none. If we look at this year alone, they have arrested and seized fake currency operatives, smugglers, and counterfeiters of antique idols, liquor, cigarettes, medicine, and much more. However, it needs to be understood that all those involved in illicit trade see COVID-19 as an opportunity, and they are and will continue to exploit these uncertain times. It is for the enforcement agencies to ensure that no level of complacency is allowed to set in. I had mentioned earlier about the reset button and the fact that nations are today looking inwards for the fulfillment of their needs and requirements. In this context, India can achieve greater heights by focusing the Prime Minister's clarion call of vocal for local, which basically means creation of strong domestic brands, gradual reduction of the foreign product footprint, greater manufacturing, ensuring that the items produced remain within the legal framework, and not only creating top-class Indian brands, but eventually top-class Indian global brands. It is actually quite simple that as more domestically made products penetrate the market, the need of foreign-made goods will gradually begin to decline, and the profits that these smugglers and counterfeiters make by exploiting high demand of foreign-made goods will be considerably reduced, and this will be huge dampener for their morale. I am delighted that the Honorable Minister for Consumer Affairs has joined us. I'm sure that his views and understanding of this subject will help us to have greater clarity on the contours of illicit trade. This will go a long way in our overall objective, which is to blunt its impact, especially under these very, very challenging and unprecedented times. I look forward to a meaningful exchange of views and ideas from the participants and wish this webinar a very best. Thank you very much and Jai Hind. And now I request Swati to take over the proceedings of the webinar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your opening welcome remarks. May I now request Mr. Hem Pandey, former Secretary, Department of Consumer Affairs and think tank member of FICCI Cascade, to moderate the session of the webinar and make his opening comments. Mr. Hem Pandey, please.
Thank you, Swati. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah, good afternoon, dear Minister, all the friends from FICCI and distinguished participants, including learned panelists. Indeed, it gives me great pleasure to be a part of this important webinar. Unfortunately, it's being held with West Bengal as focus state, which has been the state where I work as civil servant for almost 20 years. Of 2 decades of my work has been in West Bengal, so it's a proud privilege. I'm grateful to the Minister, Mr. Sandhan Pandey, whom I know since my days in West Bengal, late 80s, where I used to be Under Secretary in the state of West Bengal. We used to work together on many occasions, issues relating to protocol mainly. Mr. Sadhan Pandey then was an active member of the national party that was the government. I'm grateful to Team Cascade at FICCI India, especially Mr. Anil Rajput, Swati, and Kasifa for their untiring efforts during these trying times. And I remember in the think tank, the discussion was to go down to the sub-national levels. At national levels, we have been meeting, deliberating, but taking the process to sub-national level, and at a time when we are not in a position to really interact the way we. But I hope and only pray that we don't become like this all through. I think we need to come out of this trying time. Now, today we have distinguished panelists. So, I will be moderating the discussion, In the meantime, the focus mainly is on counterfeiting, piracy, and smuggling. So we have to strengthen the enforcement. We have to strengthen the empowerment of consumers, and we have to ensure that these two things remain work in progress. Consumers get items of their choice at a competitive price, and at the same time, people who are indulging in counterfeiting or smuggling or piracy are taken to the task, and there is a need for improving, and it will always remain a work in progress. Improvement in enforcement. It has to be dynamic, it has to be technology driven, and at the same time, empowerment of consumers is very, very important. Consumers have their rights, we will discuss in due course, a right of safety, right of information, right of choice, right of being heard, right of being educated, and redressal. Redressal of the grievance of a consumer, of course, is in the hands of the state government and the national government, but through a three-tier system. But enforcement has to be dynamic. As the people who smuggle or make counterfeit products or do piracy, they become smarter. I think the smart enforcement organizations across the country, across the world, have to be even more smarter. And I think we will move in that direction with the help of technology for better. And I think we need to, otherwise counterfeiting and smuggling is impacting jobs, impacting economies, and of course it creates havoc all around. So with these words, I think we can get down to the panel discussion, isn't it, Swati? Straight away. Hello.
Sir, yes, sir. You can request the first speaker to come on.
Yeah. So let me introduce the learned panelist, Mr. Deepankar Arora. As I was saying, dynamism in enforcement, deterrent enforcement. These are the key to check the menace of counterfeiting and smuggling. So we are privileged to have Mr. Deepankar Arora, who is currently working as Additional Director General, heading the Directorate of Revenue Intelligence in the Eastern region. Mr. Arora has wide experience in customs and work, having served on different assignments ranging from customs at Indo-Nepal border to implementing new industrial policy in Uttarakhand to policy making in the Ministry of Finance. Without taking much of time, Mr. Arora, floor is yours. Over to Mr. Arora.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hem Pandey. Honorable Minister in charge, Consumer Affairs Department, Government of West Bengal, Shri Sadanand Pandeyji, Shri Hem Pandeyji, Mr. Anil Rajput, the Chairman, FICCI Cascade and Senior Vice President, Corporate Affairs, Mr. P.C. Jha, the Advisor, FICCI Cascade and former Central Board of Indirect Taxes Customs, my co-panelist, Mrs. Banerjee, President of Federation of Consumer Association, Mr. Pradeep Dikshit, it is nice to see you here on this platform, and all the other members of this who are attending this webinar. First of all, my heartfelt thanks to FICCI Cascade for organizing this so very important an event, and that too in a state and a region which has historically made and marred the destiny of the country, and in some ways more than just the country, historically speaking. Indeed, as Mr. Rajput said, you see, the illicit trade has been estimated to be anything up to $3 trillion. In fact, if you say the estimate of about 10% of global trade, we are looking at more than $6 to $7 trillion of illegal money that is getting generated out of various types of cross-border crimes. Now, world over, the number one ranked international cross-border crime is that in drug trafficking. Second, I believe, is trade in counterfeit goods, which is very much the subject of this seminar as well. The third most notoriously ranked global trade is that in human trafficking. And the fourth most significant global trade, illegal global trade, is that in wildlife, which includes both flora and fauna. And that is estimated to be anything between 30 to 100 billion US dollars per annum. So the problem is very well articulated in the opening remarks by Mr. Rajput. But I would like to share a quick background as we were discussing. You see, today we are witnessing an increase in trade conflicts, right? We had the conflict between US and China over much of the last year. And now we are in COVID times where the economic conflict has got further accentuated because of slump and recession in economies. And therefore, perhaps it is not surprising, or perhaps there is an uncanny coefficient of correlation in the recent aggression on the Asian political map. And I would limit myself to that remark. There is some sort of coefficient of correlation between economic distress in various economies, including China, and the aggression that we are seeing. And historically speaking, as we were informally discussing, this is not a new phenomena. If one looks at the history of imperialism globally, and in particular colonization of India, we are all well aware that 300 years back, it was the lure of money, the lure of economic richness, which brought various European countries to the shores of India in the form of various East Indian companies. They wanted to exploit the trade advantages, strengthen their economies, and while doing so, they realized an opportunity, a political opportunity, and that led to the all-famous, well-known chapter of 200 years of colonial saga. And we discussed this in the previous FICCI Cascade seminar, as how countries like India and of course China as well, which were contributing 20 to 25% of world GDP, not just for 1, 10 or 100 years, but for 2000 years. Suddenly at the end of 200 years of colonialism, we were contributing less than 1%, and today it's marginally improved to not more than 2 or 3% of world GDP is what we are contributing in nominal terms. In per capita terms, again, we may be in terms of purchasing power parity in the top 5 economies of the world, but in terms of per capita income, we still rank far below our true potential. Now, what is stopping us from reaching this is the question before us. Obviously, strengthening, of the Indian economy is the way forward, and how you can achieve that is by strengthening domestic Indian industry. All of you who are members of FICCI and all the trade bodies, we need to increase our growth, we need to increase the incomes, we need to become world-class, efficient products, quality products, low-cost products. Now, the challenge is how to do that. The Honorable Prime Minister in the recent past, given the COVID scenario and the pandemic, and the recession it has set in, has highlighted the need for vocal for local. We have various schemes like Atmanirbhar program. We have the Prime Minister's announced 20 lakh crore package. And if you've been following the developments, about close to 1.5 lakh crore rupees has been pledged to the downtrodden families, close to 80 crore families, by way of providing rations of up to 5 kg of cereals and 1 kg of pulses per month, right up to November. Now, the question is, how are we going to fund this and finance this? And that is where the importance of revenues, importance of countering smuggling comes into play. Now, I will like to give a quick snapshot, if the chair permits at this stage, or perhaps later in round 2, the smuggling trends report, the predominant trends in East Asian region. Now, I'd like a quick word from the chair. Would you like me to do it now, or shall we do it in a second round to share with the audience the major trends?
So we can do it in the second round where Mr.
Right.
Pandey can ask some questions. Then
Thank you.
Maybe you can share the trends.
Yes. Thank you, Swati, for sharing that. So the challenge before us, of course, we are improve and increase the enforcement, which is a work always in progress, as Mr. Hem Pandey mentioned. But I think more significant than that is enforcement ideally should not be working at all. In other words, the Indian industry, you see, when we have imports, either undervalued imports or we have fraudulent exports or we have trade in counterfeit goods, why is all this happening? Because the Indian society, led by the Indian traders and led by unscrupulous industry elements, they are out to make a fast buck. They are out to make money because of greed at the cost of, the genuine Indian industry suffering. So perhaps that is the root of the problem which we need to look at. And therefore, any amount of enforcement would be insufficient unless and until we curtail this tendency, unless and until we imbibe a spirit to work selflessly for the growth of the society, Indian society. As the Gita says, you do work for the sake of work. And the government would love to partner. We in enforcement would love to partner with you, prominent industrial associations, conscientious industrialists, conscientious traders, because enforcement can only be done on the basis of information. You see, the trade facilitation is a very important goal of not just Indian government, but all the global governments at large. We need to facilitate trade while securing the trade. So we need to build these bridges of partnership between society, between conscientious industrialists, between conscientious traders, and we need to stem the tendencies for making the ill-gotten wealth. And you see, yesterday was Dalai Lama's birthday, and he turned 85. And in a very interesting interview with Pico Iyer, which was published in Times of India, the answer to all the ills of not just any society, not just India, but all the world, 7 billion people, lies in peaceful progress. As the Honorable Prime Minister said, any kind of expansionist tendencies, either militaristic or economic, are not going to succeed in the long term. India's answer is through peace, peaceful development, but peace requires strength as well. One cannot talk of peace without strength. So I'll stop here with these thoughts, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
To Swati, Mr. Rajput, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Dipankar Arora. Before I request Madam Mala Banerjee to speak, Minister Mr. Sadhan Pandey has to attend some other important assignment, I guess. So before Mala Banerjee, may I now request Honorable Minister in charge of Consumer Affairs in Government of West Bengal, I think almost for a decade now, Mr. Sadhan Pandey has been handling issues of consumer affairs in the state of West Bengal, and let's listen to him share his experiences so far as counterfeiting and smuggling and piracy of goods in the eastern part of our country in general and in the state of West Bengal in particular is concerned. Over to মাননীয় মন্ত্রী, আশা করি আপনি ভালো আছেন, আপনারা সবাই ভালো আছেন। নমস্কার। Over to you. Over to Mr. Sadhan Pandey.
Good morning to all of you. Good afternoon. All the delegates, especially my good friend, Mr. Hem Pandey, with whom I have worked. He was the secretary in the Consumer Department in Delhi, and I am the minister for the last 10 years. And Mr. Anil Rajput, my good friend for many years, Mala Banerjee, very aggressive consumer movement lady, and other delegates, Dipankar ji, everybody. I want to wish everybody all the best. Now, in this country of 130 crores, the government of India is not very serious about the consumer movement in the state, in the country. You will understand that the Consumer Act after 1986 was passed in Parliament last year in August. But till today, the rules and regulation, what Parliament has decided, what the country has decided, is still the rules have not been declared. So the new rules, the new concept of Consumer Act cannot be implemented. So it shows that the government is not serious. Government of India is not serious. Otherwise, you would have found very new clauses in the new act. I'm sorry, Mr. Hempande was the secretary. He started it, but till today, it has not been done. The revenue, the money extended to the Consumer Department, where Mr. Ramvilas Paswan is the minister, very, very little. So in the European countries, all over the world, consumer movement is very strong. But in India, it is very weak. And in West Bengal is the only state, please understand, it is the only state that food department and consumer department has been separated. And for the last 10 years, I am in charge of the consumer department. Mr. Paswan has written to all governments that please separate the consumer department and the food department. All over India, both the departments are in the hands of the same minister. Mr. Paswan has not left. After giving this letter, he should have said that I will leave consumer department or I will be in charge of the food department. Now, consumer department is not getting the attention it should get. Please remember, all the people in the country are consumers. They are buying, they are purchasing, and they are buying. So they are all consumers. Remember that counterfeiting and smuggling, this is a very big crime which is occurring in the cities, especially for big products. Like in Calcutta, when I asked the enforcement department and my department, legal metrology officers, to raid some places, I found that packages of Tata tea being packed in new packets. The tea is local and the packets are printed. And this kind of things are occurring. Not only for Tata tea, but for various body oils. So the poor people, even soaps, other things. So these are displayed in the footpaths of Calcutta and sold. So we are making people aware that this is wrong. Mr. Anil Rajput mentioned that Bengal is the border for 3 countries. And I will tell you some of my experience that cigarettes bought from other countries which are damaged should not be sold in public. They were displayed in Calcutta Park Street. I raided them, and these cigarettes are smuggled into the country because it comes in the port and it is displayed in Calcutta. And this is marked for Nepal. It is marked for Nepal, but in between the carriages get down and these are smuggled, and in the city of Calcutta and other places, these cigarettes are totally counterfeiting and they have no standard. All the health condition of the people will get affected. So not only cigarettes, but everything. Now I have a fear that after the ban on the goods of China, there will be a lot of smuggling from China through North Bengal, Nepal, Bhutan, into India. There will be a lot of smuggling even in Bihar. So a lot of smuggling of Chinese products, because Chinese products has flooded the market and Indian government has taken a good decision to stop China's products indigenously, make it in India. Make it in India, brand India. But we will need a lot of time to have those goods made by us. Because Chinese goods were use and throw. And every industry use their products. So they will try to get smuggled products. So this kind of smuggling is done. And I don't know what government of India is going to do. Now, counterfeiting and smuggling is a loss to the economy. Indian economy has grown, but somebody talked about the 20 crore program, 20 lakh crores program. But I don't know how this will reach the common man, because all are through the bank. You have to pay interest. So because of this lockdown, people are suffering. Many people are unemployed. And you do not expect that the Panchayat department, where 100 days work approved by Government of India, that work, 200 rupees per day, all the people of migrants who have come, they will join that and they will take 200 rupees per day. They are not meant for that. So there is a big problem. And the problem will be that migrants, they will not be able to return to their own state where they are working. Because the unemployment situation in Maharashtra, in Gujarat, that will be filled up by the local workers. Elderly people will not be brought back. So they have to stay in West Bengal. And we have to provide them with jobs. Jobs which they are used to. We just can't say that you attain this job of the job card and get 200 rupees or 250 rupees. This is the way. So there is a lot of problem because of this, but we are sure the economy will bounce back. Share market has bounced back again. So we have a feeling that today in India, only one sector can save us. That is our motherland. The land can produce many products. Land is associated with many products. My department, another department, which I am the minister, self-help group, where I am seeing that any village, boy and girl, they can get employment through production. What production? Poultry production, goatery production, any farming production, aloe vera production, lac production, any kind of thing which can be from the trees, from the garden, fishery production. The 100 days work, they can plant trees, asset trees. So this is a very big segment which we have to think, and we have to pump in money so that they can grow. And once they grow, the prices level in the cities will come down, because people are getting salaries and they cannot match the expenditure. There is a very big crisis that I get a fixed salary and I can't match the expenditure because the prices are going up. To bring the prices down, you have to have production. Like engineering production, that can, because that is lockdown, affected. But one production in the agriculture field, if you have all these productions of goatery, poultry, trees, fishery, any kind of production that will sell and people can get employment. We are an agri-based country. We must not think of big industries. Big industries, wherever they are there, they will function. They will try to revive. But to provide people with employment, young people with employment, that can be only through our mati, what do you say? Ground, soil. We can make out of it. India is a rich country. in this method. But our planning has not been there, that we base our things, because our requirement is the city. Everything is for our eating, so today, chicken is 270 rupees. It was 120 rupees. So you can understand. So people have to do that. And regarding counterfeiting, I invite FICCI and Cascade Chairman Mr. Anil Rajput that you have a plan to join hands with us to have a massive campaign, a massive grading program where these kind of products, this kind of smuggling centers are there. Our police force, enforcement department will also join. So if we can have this kind of plan, I think this can be reduced, especially in the border areas. West Bengal is a paradise for people. Myanmar is closer, China is closer, Nepal is close, Bhutan is close. So it is a center where people can invest. People coming out from China in India, they're coming out. Now, defense items from America, they have to make it here. So all these things, every part of the car, the company is making and you are making, the local people are making the same parts. So you cannot stop because people are very cautious about the price factor. The company makes one thing and the counterfeiting, that means somebody else makes the same thing and they produce the same thing and the car user uses that. So not only car, what I'm saying regarding engine machines, any kind of equipment people are making. You see the pumps of Kirloskar, methyl, all these are original spares, OEM, separate. People are making the same thing and that is being used. So it's very difficult to stop this kind of thing. And in India, I believe that we are one of the masterminds to duplicate any product, international product, and make it here. Suzuki, Maruti Suzuki thought their parts cannot be. The local people are making it. So our people are quite intelligent enough to make it. So if you call that counterfeiting, it's very difficult to stop that. Smuggling is also there. But today, smuggling will be less. In gold smuggling, it will be more. But smuggling will be less because we have opened up the economy. In our shelf, what you find? All the foreign products and Indian products. People go to the shop and see all the items and they choose one item. And that item is an Indian item. So that was a craze 10 years back that we want foreign goods. There's a craze. But after the economy opened up, that foreign product has to suit Indian standards. And then there will be taken. You have seen McDonald's. They brought their products, not sold. They transformed into Indian. So these kind of things are happening. So I'm very happy that FICCI and Mr. Rajput is a 40 years friend of mine, 40 years. And Mr. Hempande is a very, very good person. He came to my department as a secretary and sat with me. What is my requirement? He fulfilled it. I never forget. So these kind of things, West Bengal is very strong in consumer movement. But other states, I've seen very poor. And why poor? Because the government of India is not serious. That, see, one thing I'm telling all of you, out of the topic, you cannot, people have grievances. Generally, people have grievances against the government. Where they should go for little grievance, they should go to the Thana, the police, The police is not entitled to solve this problem. It has to have a consumer movement. Big people, they will try to avoid the poor people. The poor people have one area. And consumer is not only in products. Consumer is everywhere. You buy a flat, don't get justice, don't get the flat properly, the consumer department interferes. In the hospital, the doctors are not giving service, wrong operation, they are caught and their hospitals remove them. So this, please understand, everything under this, you are in the country. You feel that you are cheated. So I receive a lot of letters and I have a grievance cell. The grievance cell looks into all the complaints. Government of India still today do not have a grievance cell. The new amendment last August, it was passed in Delhi, would not make rules, cannot notify which parliament has passed. I'm very sorry. I've written to him 2 letters that please, when the parliament has passed something, why don't you act? Why your officers are not acting? If something is wrong in my office, I am responsible. I have to reply to the people. So this is happening. I'm thanking all of you. That is a very good thing. I am always with you. Whenever you want me, I'm there to give you the advice. And also, I have joined many programs with FICCI. So, very nice. Thank you.
So thank you so much. I'm told you have a busy schedule. So on behalf of all the participants, I will pose few questions on behalf of all of us. But before that, I must congratulate you, compliment you for addressing us today. In fact, it's a virtual meeting, but you were willing to have a real meeting in March, before the lockdown started. You had given you a date. Unfortunately, the lockdown started, so we could not do it. So thank you so much for the virtual meeting. And virtual meeting obviously is not how we want to convey the real things. But then also, the one important thing that you said is to separate the Consumer Affairs Department from the Food Department. And if you recall, when I was secretary, we had written to all the states. Of course, West Bengal had already done it. You are the pioneer in having 2 separate departments. Food department is mainly for the 170,000 crore subsidy to the states, whereas Consumer Affairs Department has not even 0.1% of that budget. So obviously, there is no priority so far as Consumer Affairs is concerned, and it's a regulatory department. And now, I think for the better of the industry, internal trade has been shifted to the Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. Earlier, internal trade was part of Consumer Affairs Department. So, because Consumer Affairs Department's primary job is empowerment of consumers and ensure consumer rights. So, sir, from that angle, and you have already spoken about the Consumer Protection Act. You are right that when the act comes, rules and guidelines should come simultaneously. If not simultaneously, within few weeks. So unfortunately, that has not happened, and I hope Government of India is seriously bringing out the rules and guidelines soon, so that the act becomes the amended act, the new act, Consumer Protection Act of 2019, gets implemented. How are you, in spite of rules and guidelines, how the state of West Bengal is handling consumer protection in general, and in the new scenario, particularly, the lockdown and the kind of threats that you have? How are you handling in the state of West
Bengal? We are maintaining social distance and operating our office. You'll be happy to know that the National Commission branch will be set up in West Bengal, Calcutta. I have already built a building in Rajarhat, and after this lockdown, I want the national level to come to Calcutta so that people don't have to go to Delhi. If the National Commission has a branch in Mumbai, Calcutta, Delhi, or any other state, I am not bothered about, but the minister has confirmed that it will be set up in Bengal. So Bengal people will not have to go to Delhi for National Commission cases. The second thing that I have divided in North Bengal, people don't have to come for the State Commission to Calcutta. And South Bengal, I have set up in Asansol so that people don't have to come to Calcutta. So three branches of the State Commission. And every district has its own forum. So I'm very happy even that all the things have been constructed and in operation.
Sir, thank you so much for strengthening the three-tier structure and having the bench of circuit bench of National Commission in West Bengal. I think this will help the entire Eastern India. So thank you so much. We are really grateful for that. And sir, another question that I have on my hand is, during these trying times, movement of illicit trade, illicit products has increased, and the kind of borders that West Bengal has, Bangladesh, Nepal, of course, everything goes through us, and then comes back, Bhutan, and of course China, and the kind of goods that we get from China. So how are you geared up during this particular time to handle this, and of course in the longer run? Over to you, sir.
My legal metrology department has 140 officers distributed in all districts. And we have a total meeting with the enforcement department that we'll work together to find out these kinds of smuggling, counterfeiting, everything. But if FICCI or your cascade supports us, so we can have a special program of taking some young people who will go for raid of the several counterfeiting items so that it will save the industry.
So, sir, thank you very much, sir. My final question is on the holistic approach, on the collaboration between various agencies, Government of India, state government, state police, Government of India police, stakeholders, consumers, consumer activists. Many a times we all work in vertical areas. We work along the lines. We do not have horizontal coordination, and that is where the regulation fails. So are we strengthening horizontal coordination among all the stakeholders, and how are we doing this in West Bengal?
The economic situation of the state is not good because we have a lot of requirement from the Delhi government, the Government of India. So money is not coming. So because of the less money, we are cutting our budget. Now everything in the consumer department is spent by the Government of West Bengal, and Government of India is not spending any money.
So thank you so much, sir. Thank you for promoting local food, local grown food must be eaten, and I think that will be.
And only when you are there, only that time I got money from Delhi.
So thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your time, and all of us in FICCI Cascade, in the think tank, and all the participants today. We have a good number of 100+ participants. So all of us, thank you very much, and long live the consumer movement in the country, national level in general, and in West Bengal in particular, at the best of the hands. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Minister. Now we move on to our another learned panelist who is working with the consumers, Madam Mala Banerjee. Ms. Mala Banerjee is the Federation of President of the Federation of Consumer Association in West Bengal. So without wasting further time between the participants and Madam Bala Banerjee, who is working on the consumer protection and fair trade business practices, over to Madam Bala Banerjee. Over to you, Madam Bala Banerjee. Swati, I hope she's there.
Yes, I think somebody has to unmute Banerjee, madam. Kashifa, can you please see?
We cannot hear you, Mrs. Banerjee. You may want to unmute your
She's on unmute.
Yes, she's on unmute. Ma'am, if you could kindly unmute yourself.
Ma'am, you are on unmute.
She's on unmute, but we still can't hear her.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me. And I think I have very little time, but I address Honorable Minister Sadhan Pandeyji and the respected Secretary, Government of India, respected FICCI President and all the participants and respected panelists more. So I am not very aggressive as per Minister. I am to the point, I am active, I am energetic, and I am neutral. And we are voluntary for last 30 years, not 20 years, not 10 years, 30 years. We have been doing with our network, huge network in West Bengal with mission and vision. Moreover, just I want to tell one thing, that one correction. Consumer Department in West Bengal has been separated since 2002, not 10 years. It is almost 18 years. So we were the first in India, we and the Lakshadweep, because I have huge experience, because I do not get transferred. So I neither I am retired. So this is the point. Now next is to the point, smuggling, counterfeiting, combating with smuggling, counterfeiting, this with the context of COVID-19. So I have to be confined, I have to confine myself in the China product. But the first allegation, not allegation, grievance, why this Zoom, why not Google? Zoom is China app. We want to boycott all 69, 70 apps. So why Zoom? Zoom is dangerous now because most of we receive complaints. Zoom is dangerous now as because it is China, and we apprehend that most of our, there is a chance to be hacked and bank account will be zero, whatever. But smuggling and counterfeiting, with respect to COVID, China, we are very much dependent on China products. There is no manufacturing, there is no commercial aspect, anything, and mostly we are dependent on toys, wristwatch, and blah blah, mobile, IT, spare parts, mostly everything on. So what are we doing? I am not the person to talk about the problems. Problems everybody knows, but I am to solve the problem. How? The immediate, because it's a high time to take up the initiative by the business, by the manufacturers, by the producers. How we have to immediately start MSME sector to the unemployed youth and do other small scale industries and middle industries immediately. That step should be taken in war food. So this will be done. And this is the only solution. Otherwise, all other solutions are long run. It is a long journey. I know it takes time for paperwork, for other administrative work. But this time we have to work on war footing. We have to activate MSME sector very soon to avoid more and more smuggling, more and more counterfeiting. Because one advantage is there, smuggling products and counterfeiting products, they are affordable price because generally consumers we have very limited financial strength, most of the consumers. So we incline to the foreign goods just mentioned by Honorable Minister. So we have our right to choose. We must boycott Chinese goods first, number one, to control this counterfeiting and smuggling for this COVID purpose. COVID is a massive setback. So at the same time, we have learned that we must be self-reliant. India is not at all self-reliant, and China knows very well that India, without China products, economy will be hampered. But my point is, today we have not much time. So my point is different. My point is, we import not very, lot of things from various foreign countries, but we export little bit, much less than import. So financially, we will not be much hampered, but China will be much more hampered. Only soldiers and the fighting and war will not damage China. China is to be damaged by economies, by finance, by business. So only way, so far consumer movement is concerned, that is boycott. Boycott is the very important item in consumer movement. So we must boycott China products, China ingredients. Some things we compile here, but the ingredients and the spare parts all are from China and different other countries. So we must boycott. It is our mission and it should be our vision to stop this type of unfair trade practice. This should be rigidly followed. And moreover, our government machineries are very strong. I have full faith on government machineries. All the statutory bodies, those who are involved, and our minister, both from in Delhi and in West Bengal too. I am a neutral person. So I admit that this is possible. It's my suggestion to FICCI to take it seriously, that to boycott China products and to take initiative to activate MSME sector so that it will help both ways. One is to damage China's economy, another way to help our Indian economy to be enriched. So mostly smuggling and counterfeiting. Who are those who are backdoor dwellers? This is unfair trade practice. And these are affordable price. The price is a factor. So India should take MSME sector, which can be promoted by business only. And I hope this meeting will be successful only then, as our Honorable Mr. Shadunda rightly pointed out, that this should be taken up immediately. So I will not lengthen my lecture. This is not the time, neither the platform to deliver lecture, but this is a to the point, very effective point to enrich ourselves, to stop counterfeiting, smuggling in the context of COVID. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mala Banerjee. London panelists, please stay. We will have some questions on behalf of the participants. So first, let me ask Madam Mala Banerjee, President Consumer Association, whether what in your view would be a good communication strategy which industries, consumer organizations, media, and all stakeholders could have a good communication strategy. How can we strengthen the empowerment of consumers? How can consumer become more smart? How can the enforcement be dynamic and smart? And industry, and how can we get the support of the industry? So all of us coming together, I think will definitely impact the challenge that we have of counterfeiting. So how best we can come together, setting our verticals.
Hello. Again, God.
Yeah, Madam Mala.
Yes. Again, back to the square one, because we are always together with ministry, with business, with everybody, because it is not a single job. And moreover, we are voluntary workers. We do not get fund, we do not get anything out of any ministry. Anyway, so the best way, this is the one of the best way, but we can reach very few people, because we have to reach to the grassroots. We have to reach to the grassroots. If we reach to the grassroots, then only, if we reach to the grassroots, then only we have to organize meeting, which is not possible at the time. And from our Federation of Consumer Associations West Bengal, we have already started with our little bit funding by speaking on each and every item on YouTube, on TV, and we attend all the video conferences and video calling, etc., etc. But we cannot reach to the absolute grassroots. These, IT sector cannot. Yes, mobile is a largest penetrating technology in India, but that mobile is only receiving phone and doing phone call. But this smartphone, it is impossible to have everybody's hand in remote areas, and neither and they don't know how to operate it. Under the circumstances, we can jointly, or if you entrust us, we can do it through the TV. TV is the obsession of general mass. In TV, if we speak 20 minutes, it will reach to the absolutely remote villages, because people are obsessed with TV serial and all, this. I'm not talking about the first layer TV. The second grade TVs, the cost is not that much, so we can reach there. So this is the answer. Otherwise, what is the answer right now, I don't know. But whenever you will call us, whenever we ask for any help, either government or from any organization, and they call us very frequently, they call us and we join. But this is the hurdle, COVID, and that is why the TV is the only answer.
Thank you, Madam Banerjee.
Thank you very much.
How about asking for the bills of transaction, Jago Grahak, Jago campaign of the government of India? How are we? Where are we on that? The multimedia campaign, is it impacting, or there's a need for review? And how is on the bill part? Because if we transaction bill, use of plastic money has come. So has it improved the situation in general?
Yes, of course, improved. But India is a 135 crores. Population. To reach everywhere is not a matter of joke. And one more thing is, yes, we have some impact definitely in the urban areas, in the metropolis, everywhere. And cost and price is definitely a factor. So in easy, cheap price is required. Pricing is the main factor in India. So we do not consider only Calcutta, Delhi, Bombay, and few. We are very handful. So it is not our desire. So we have to reach there. So yes, it is a spontaneous and a continuous process. Continuous. Any awareness program is a continuous process. Public memory is very short. We have to hurt, we have to tell them repeatedly, and it will go on and go on. Some people say awareness, oh, is not required. I say my 30 years experience.
Please, yeah.
I would say with my 30 years experience since 80, then that time there was no act. Then 86 act came, then perpetual 3-4 amendments were there. But with experience that the awareness is at most important, because public memory is short and the affordable pride is a factor, and government can do something but can't do everything. With our help, we have to proceed. We cannot stop anywhere, and there is no end. Today, COVID, tomorrow, another thing, it will be a perpetual thing. So we have to be very well equipped all the time. So these are the answers.
Thank you, Madam Banerjee. Keep up the good work on consumer empowerment. Rural consumer will always remain a challenge. The throwaway culture of the urban consumer, I think, we need to learn the throwaway culture should not reach in the consumers of the rural area. And we can start with the local food that will help the local farmers. If we eat local, it will have the least carbon footprint also. And I think there are many good things, but challenge will remain. I think that knee-jerk reactions will not help, I guess. So thank you very much for working on the field of consumer empowerment. Mr. Deepak Janaron, are you around? So can I ask you?
Yes.
Yeah. So how far the enforcing agencies such as customs, DRI successful in eastern part of the country, particularly in West Bengal, in detecting illicit products, and what are the hurdles faced by you all in because West Bengal has a seaport, again a long riverine area and international borders. Land border, long land border, porous border. I have worked as DM Nadia, district magistrate Nadia. I know 265 kilometers of that particular border itself used to be very difficult. So please, your take on this.
Thank you, Mr. Hem Pandey. I think you've set the ball rolling by rightly saying that this eastern, and I would include northeastern region as well. You see, it's very important to realize that the Indo-Myanmar border, which is more than 1,000 kilometers, and Indo-Tibet border, Indo-China border, also directly impacts the eastern region, because all the smuggling that happens through the Burma border into Manipur or Mizoram eventually culminates into North Bengal, the chicken neck corridor, as we say, 23 kilometers of stretch, which links northeast to mainland India, and recall the Doklam crisis, but that's another story. So it has to, all the goods which come from that side have to eventually come into mainland. So we share the border in this region with 5 countries. It's not just Bangladesh and Nepal, as you rightly said, it's Bhutan, it's China and Burma. And if we look at the trends of smuggling, I'd like to quickly, in fact, take this opportunity to brief the distinguished members of this seminar with what kind of enforcement action, as Mr. Pandey, you rightly asked me to elaborate on. Now, let me start with some quick figures. If we look at gold smuggling, which is rapidly increasing over the past few years, in last 1 year alone, we have seized close to 570 kgs of gold worth 220 crores. And for the benefit of participants, I would like to mention that I have shared an exhaustive trends of smuggling report with FICCI. And I would be grateful to FICCI if they could share that and disseminate it widely, not just amongst the participants of this webinar, but may also consider disseminating it other platforms so that this information spreads to larger people for larger good. So 570 kgs of gold worth 220 crores has been seized by DRI and our allied formations in this region in last 1 year alone. And if I look at last 3 years, the amount of gold seized would be in excess of 1,500 kgs, valued at more than 500 crores. So that's straight revenue to the government exchequer that we have contributed. Foreign currency remains a very important area of concern as well. We have seized foreign currency worth 30 crore rupees in last 1 year alone. And many a times we've had very amusing operations where a herd of 5-6 carriers are carrying the smuggled foreign currency through the airport or through the train. We have now connectivity, not just through air and sea, but through land and through rail as well between India, Bangladesh. Cigarettes, obviously with Mr. Rajput around and with the ITC distinguished corporate members in this audience would be happy to know that something like 26 crores worth of cigarettes have been seized, close to 2.6 crore sticks. And here I would like to mention a very recent case, just within last 1 week. And Honorable Minister Sadan Pandeyji mentioned about Nepal transit goods being smuggled. So let me share with you something which has not gone into media yet. 1 week back, we arrested 4 people who were forging documents for Nepal transit. And we found 4 containers that they were attempting to smuggle in this fashion by faking the documents. So 1 container's documents had been forged and faked. And this container had declared computer parts inside it. The other 2 had declarations of black paper. 1 had declaration of toiletries. And the forgery was confirmed by the customs, because customs officers whose signatures were forged, they verified this was not signed. And they would have simply taken these goods out of the warehouse and would have diverted it outside Calcutta. We produced them before the judge on arrest, and you will be not very happy to know that the judge gave them bail and the argument on the same day. And this is a very unprecedented situation. The argument cited was that only 1 container's documents were found, whereas we had evidences for other 3 containers as well, though the forgery hadn't yet happened. Now, be that as it may, when we examined these 4 containers, against a declared value of a few lakhs, we found goods worth 15 crores. Now, let me share the breakup. 1 container which had declaration of computer parts was found to contain 45 lakh cigarettes. And these cigarettes were Gudam Garam cigarettes from Indonesia, and these are valued at roughly 4.5 crores. Another container which had toiletries had very high branded cosmetics, multinational brands, and that had come from Shanghai. That container has been estimated to be valued at close to 9 crores. And the other 2 containers had black pepper of Vietnamese origin. Now, all these, and this was valued at close to about 3 crores. So it added up to something like 15 crores of goods. Now, Honorable Minister mentioned, we need to have an increasing agricultural base, very important. But you see what is happening to the Indian pepper farmers and farmers who are associated with cultivation of betel nuts, another hot smuggling commodity. You see, their livelihoods are being lost only on account of these fraudulent elements who are out to make quick money by way of smuggling and reaping these profits which arise out of smuggling. So anyways, we will be taking further legal action. But coming back to other areas of enforcement, wildlife crime, again, you see, I must mention all crimes, cross-border crimes are connected. Because be it undervaluation of goods coming from Dubai, China, and elsewhere, be it export frauds, be it counterfeit goods, be it fake Indian currencies, eventually, you see, the money has to move globally. So it results in a huge amounts of trade-based money laundering. So at one end, at a global end, all these crimes, they tend to get connected. So it's very important for us to look at, have a holistic picture of combating crime. So you'll be not so happy to know that wildlife crime, we have detected a series of cases, of exotic birds, animals. We recently seized just about in this lockdown period, COVID period, on 21st June, 22 exotic birds that come all the way from South America: hyacinth macaw, pescurets, parrots, severe macaw. These are all protected under Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Fauna and Flora. We have seized things like lemur from Madagascar, Asian palm civets, and other hollocks, gibbons, etc. A lot of cases of ivory, elephant tusks have been seized. Coming back to diversion of Nepal-bound consignments. Now, the case I mentioned, interestingly, and this is again something I share with this audience, out of the 4 people whom we had arrested, these 2 we had arrested 6 months back as well. So you see, there's an element, there's a tendency amongst the traders, amongst the agents, and supported by I would say the richer businessmen of the country, to make this profit, to make this illegal money again and again. So we have seized 180 metric tons of black pepper in the last 1 year over several consignments. Now, narcotics, we have done close to 78 crores worth of narcotics, mostly ganja, yaba tablets, etc. They've been seized. Now, coming to the most important part from the perspective of this conference, part of enforcement action, which is commercial frauds. Now, trade-based money laundering, as I mentioned, is a very increasingly big concern. And you will be surprised to know that DRI busted a major scam in the last 1 year.
Thank you.
Which involves,
Thank you, Deepankar. I think
I'll just take a minute more. My apologies.
I'll supplement the question, okay. so that we focus on the COVID time also. The health illicit trade of those.
If you give me a minute, because these statistics are very revealing, but I'll leave it to you.
Okay. Come on. Another 2 minutes. Yeah, please.
If you give me a minute, very important for the participants to know. You see, 2,200 crores is close to $400 million worth of fraud has been detected, where precious stones were being declared as being imported from Hong Kong, whereas these were rough stones which were being junked on road. We have arrested 14 people in the scam, and 2 people we have detained under an act called Coffee Posa, which is Conservation of Foreign Exchange and Prevention of Smuggling Activities Act. Now imagine this kind of money going for nothing, money for nothing, a famous song, to Hong Kong and Dubai for funding other illicit activities. Now, these companies which did, there were a whole host of 47 companies spread all over India. And many of these companies were shell companies. So what they were doing this for is anybody's guess, but we have evidences to indicate that another mushrooming scam, including in COVID times, Mr. Pandey, is that of fraudulent IGST refunds, where the tendency to make a quick buck has ballooned into showing exports of highly overvalued goods. And since there are people from tobacco industry here, I must mention an arrest we have done 15 days back with PPE kits, our officers going into the house in Salt Lake and intercepting this gentleman. I will not name him. He has attempted to take 40 crores of refund, out of which 28 crore he had already got, and 12 crore we blocked when we detected the scam. What was the offense? Well, the offense was he was exporting chewing tobacco to consignees in Thailand with buyers in Singapore. And on examination, we intercepted live consignments. You know what was found? Mouth fresheners, which were valued at something like 35 to 40 rupees a kg against the declared value of 3,000 rupees a kg. Now, scams like these, unfortunately, are mushrooming. It's not possible for government to start checking every container during export because the exports will come to a standstill. And that is where we really look up to FICCI, to other conscientious industry players, to clearinghouse agents, to stakeholders, to come up with information and share the black sheep amongst them. Apart from that, we have a lot of cases of abuse of SAFTA, South Asia Free Trade Agreement. And this is a very, very important concern in COVID times, which directly impacts the Indian industry. Because attempts are being made, let me just give quick 3 examples. We have had palm oil and soya bean oil, for which Malaysia and Indonesia are known to be great producers globally, sending the goods coming from there, but masqueraded and shown to have originated in Bangladesh. So they've shown fake value addition of, say, more than 30%, which is required in terms of the free trade agreement. But in reality, it was not even 10%. 270 crores was sought to be evaded in the scam by certain Indian importers. Canola oil, another interesting product, which is a genetically modified crop, which originates in Canada. Now, these goods, again, were routed through Bangladesh, and we have a scam involves duty implications of 52 crores. And finally, the last case study I'd like to share is that of ready-made garments. You know, Indian garments are famous world over, whereas we had this case of a major retail company. This was covered by press. I would not like to name the corporate. It's a well-established brand. They've evaded 15 crores of duty on ready-made garments, shown to be of Bangladeshi origin. But our investigations indicated that a lot of free raw materials which had come from UAE and China, their value was not included. And had it been included, the value addition in Bangladesh would have been much lower than what was required. The chief financial officer of this major retail outlet in the country has been arrested in Bengal, and we arrested him, DRI, and the High Court directed the company to pay before the bail could be considered, and they paid up full 15 crores. In conclusion, I would like to say in one line, we are facing a humongous challenge for Indian industry to flourish, for India to reoccupy its rightful place on the world economic map. We need to empower our industries. As Mrs. Mala Banerjee said, MSMEs, our enterprises have to flourish, but they cannot unless and until this tendency to import and misdeclared values, to gain money by illegal exports, to launder money, this tendency of human greed amongst us Indians only, amongst our corporates only, amongst our traders only, is firmly curbed. We seek your assistance because good information is valued by DRI. It comes from people like you from society. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity and for organizing this event. Over to you, Mr. Pandey.
Thank you, Deepankar. In fact, you've answered my part of the second question. What are the top sectors where smuggling is taking place, how it takes place, and things like that. The second part of that question, I must compliment all enforcement agencies that despite many odds, one is working very hard professionally with renewed vigor, but still there's an impression that our actions, our regulatory actions, our enforcement actions are more reactive, knee-jerk reaction. When could we have a fear of unknown that I have 100% chance of getting caught if I indulge in anything which is not permitted? How are we moving towards that direction? Particularly with use of technology. Today, we can, at the time, you and I, you are in your office, but I am sitting in my home and we are talking to each other. If with this kind of technology in hand, can we go further miles, or we keep on banking on the empowerment of consumers, local production, and it's an open world. But can technology help us, and are we moving towards a proactive direction, towards we are avoiding knee-jerk and reactive actions, or are we concentrating on the big fish, big catches, wildlife, drugs, and illegal arms, currency, fake currency, and things like that? The big ticket smuggling and big ticket counterfeiting. So, what are your take in a quick 1 minute, please?
Thank you. No, I strongly feel that obviously enforcement cutting across organizations and cutting across departments is a work in progress. And it just doesn't concern government departments or agencies alone. As I mentioned in some of the cases which I just discussed, it involves the judiciary, it involves the traders, right? So, I mean, what will happen if the persons are not getting prosecuted, or what will happen if the bails are coming far and easy and very easily? So therefore, as regards, I would partly disagree that knee-jerk reaction. In DRI, you see, when we get a smuggler and when we get a statement and when we have evidences, many a times the fear of, DRI summoning is enough for the person to spill beans. And our record, as Mr. Rajput mentioned, obviously we are a limited agency, being an intelligence agency, shows in terms of the performance, we are an invisible agency, but with visible results. However,
how can you be strengthened? What is the way? How to strengthen the capacity of DRI?
You see, DRI is an intelligence agency, and intelligence agency gives the inputs, we do action ourselves, we give inputs to other field formations. But at the end of the day, Mr. Pandey, to answer your question, you see, we had people like Jagat Seth 300 years back who connived with the British, who had a smuggling tunnel from their house to the banks of the Hooghly, where the diamonds would be ferreted out. And with that illegal money, you see, so this problem is something which is not a problem of today. We detain people under coffee posa. Now, to give an example, one of the most notorious smugglers of gold, against whom we had 20 cases involved in smuggling of 400 kgs of seized gold from them, we put them under coffee posa. You see, they went to High Court, they went to Supreme Court. High Court quashed the order, Supreme Court quashed the High Court's order, saying it was an order which was not good in law. And yet again, they moved another plea before Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, and this is a preventive detention, mind you. So you spoke of deterrence, you spoke of fear of law. So we need to strengthen the entire law enforcement mechanism in society, which is not confined to the executive, which involves judiciary, which involves the society also. You see, 130 crore people, as Mrs. Banerjee was saying, you see, no amount of police, when it comes to a theft or a robbery or a traffic violation, ultimately, you see, we need to inculcate the civic sense also. We need to inculcate a sense of conscientious behavior. We need to inculcate a sense of, moving away from greed, because God gives enough for our wants. So it is a work in progress. I think all stakeholders of society, of government, of judiciary need to join hands to make this a success. And this is a problem not alone to India. It's a global issue. It's not that smuggling doesn't happen in China or in USA or in Japan. It's probably as old as human civilization. But yes, we need to strengthen our resolve. We need to have more cooperation with various, as somebody mentioned, horizontal linkages, right? The law enforcement agencies need to talk to each other. We need more quality information from people like, people like you, people like, and I can tell you here, sitting here, this telephone call, I have had an information from a conscientious person, which led to detection of evasion of 30 to 50 crores of duty on ready-made garments coming from China, where you will be shocked to know the value of each consignment was declared 6 times lower. 1.5 crore was the value, actual value, and the declaration was 25 to 30 lakh. Now, India is a signatory to General Agreement on Trade Tariffs. We have to accept the value which is declared. So how do you get the evidence? We can't say we know you're smuggling, therefore you're caught. So in Bombay, we had to catch the people, and from their computer, we found original invoices. So you see, 10 people were arrested. So we look forward to participation of all stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak, for your commitment. I think that the organization is gradually becoming smarter. I think we need smart informants. We need more transparent enforcement across the board, so that the fear of unknown remains among the people. And it's a historical problem, I guess. But I think our effort. Madam Banerjee, finally, I will go to Mr. Anil Rajput, who has been spearheading on behalf of industry. Yeah, I'll give you a chance to respond. So Anil, after Madam Mala Banerjee speaks, it's to you. I think Swati, 25-30 minutes extra is okay with you?
Yes, sir. We have already taken 25 minutes extra. We can another 5-7 minutes.
5 minutes. So over to Mala Banerjee, and then Anil, I will have a question for you. Yeah, madam. Unmute yourself. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to point out 2 more points. Is it okay?
Yeah, please.
One is, as we are consumers, we are the ultimate. Whatever is going on, we are the ultimate. We have 2 points in our hand, irrespective of government machinery, irrespective of statutory body, irrespective of policies. As we are the sufferers, right to choose, right to safety, and the boycott, which initiated the consumer movement in American 62. So this to be enforced first, this to be, throughout, and on a very important basis and preferential basis, this awareness campaign to boycott Chinese things, because India is a huge market. Chinese market is overflowed here. So Chinese products are overflowed here. So we must stop it. That products. And one thing is right to choose we have. At the same time, we have to enrich with MSME. Otherwise, immediate, we have to, again, it is a third seminar, combating smuggling, counterfeiting, everything, but we have not reached anywhere. And this year is COVID-19. So China, one by one to be focused, not entire thing. From our side, China. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Banerjee. I think we have tremendous challenge. So let's go back to FICCI Cascade Chairman Anil Rajput, spearheading it's a great and enviable task that you are doing. It's tough on you, and I hope things will improve. Of course, this is a challenging time, COVID, but I hope that we will come over it, and there have been many constructive suggestions today from Minister, from the London panelists. So what is your take on imposing import caps or vocal for local will address the issue of illicit, unfair trade, smuggling, counterfeiting? How is it going to, is it going to help us in real, or there are many things we need to do, particularly, is it the fear of China or the Chinese products? I guess, like ants do, an ant, a GT, one ant doesn't compete with another ant, but it competes with the output of the ant, output. So as humans, I think we should challenge ourselves how Chinese products are flooding us, not by stopping them, but producing better locally, value for money. If I as a consumer, if I get value for my money with the local products, so I think I will never buy a Chinese. But as long as we do not substitute that, a viable alternative. So how are we going to take that as a challenge, and how industry can contributes on the consumer empowerment? Government is doing its bit. You heard national government, sub-national government, they are doing their bit. Jago Grahak Jago, you are also party to it. But I think we have to do money. Will industry come forward in a big way, particularly in its brand protection, particularly in protecting IP rights? And instead of having a defensive mechanism, can we have an offensive mechanism on part of the brand producers, brand builders, whether they can more also focus on particularly in respect of, if you think of the circular economy which is being promoted now, I think that could help us. Thank you. Over to Anil Rajput, and you can conclude also on that, or Cascade team. Thank you, Anil.
Thank you very much, Him. It's been a very, very interesting session. Everybody has very intimately and aggressively participated during the discussion. First of all, I'd like to address what Minister has mentioned, that he is willing to join hands with Cascade. Unfortunately, Minister is not here. Cascade would be very happy to join hands with the West Bengal government in creating more consumer awareness in that state. So we will approach his office in the next couple of weeks to see how together we can create more consumer awareness in the state of West Bengal. As Cascade, since we don't actually indulge in the aspect of enforcement, so the idea that Minister had given that we could hire some people who could help in doing some raids, that is not part of our mandate, but we will discuss how we can together work and promote our footprints of Cascade and our original motto of creating more consumer awareness on this subject. So we'll discuss the matter with the Minister's office. I'll also like to thank Arun for very, very elaborate and intense data sharing with us, and the kind of job that he's and his team is doing in the eastern side of the country. We would like to congratulate all of you and see how we can work together in getting more deeper understanding as to how Cascade can work with your team in providing some sort of data that may be useful. So we will separately discuss with you on that. You have mentioned that you shared a report with FICCI Cascade, and I will I'll ensure that we do share that report with the maximum number of people who have similar kind of concern, who are willing to take some of the suggestions forward and learn something from that report that you shared with us. I assure you we'll take appropriate action on that.
Thank
I'll
you.
also like to mention what Ms. Banerjee had mentioned, and we'll separately engage with her as to how we can create more consumer awareness through her body in that state, because that is one aspect that I'm very passionate about, because ultimately it is the consumer who is the king, and consumer is the only one who can decide which product he wants to buy. So therefore, there is a onus on the manufacturers also, as Ms. Banerjee has been mentioning, to produce products through our MSME or the other manufacturers who can fulfill the needs of the consumers. And Hem Pandey has also been very vocal in saying that ultimately the consumer has to find value. Unless he will find value, he is not going to buy your product. You see, to give value to consumer, I think at the end of the day, there are two very important fundamental points. Government also has to be conscious about this fact that industry in India has to be competitive. For industry to be competitive, there are many costs that are currently there on the industry, which have to be reviewed, looked at to ensure that industry is competitive in the country. And I think this is the first time where Prime Minister himself has called for vocal for local. And I'm sure going forward, you will find that he will take several steps which will actually make Indian industry competitive, whether it is in terms of land, whether it is in terms of labor, whether it's the laws of this country or the capital cost. All these issues have to be addressed going forward for Indian industry to be competitive. On the other side, Indian industry also have to invest in creating a very, very strong R&D, because unless we decide to make investment in R&D, we cannot become globally competitive. For global competitiveness, research and development, innovative product, focusing on the needs of the Indian consumer is an extremely important task. So I'm sure Indian industry is also getting up with this boycott of Chinese goods and the kind of impact that we've had when we have lost our soldiers on the border. The sentiment is definitely towards buying local goods. And going forward, I'm sure Indian industry will also rise up to this challenge. The most important aspect that I want to share with all these people who are listening is that at the end of the day, the future will belong to the people who will own intellectual property. India has to create intellectual property going forward. It must reside in India. If intellectual property is not with India, we will not be able to become global Indian brands. So therefore, going forward, you have to create intellectual property. You have to create strong domestic Indian brands. You can only become global brand if you have strong domestic brands. So the Prime Minister's call for vocal for local, very apt, important, and very, very critical for India's future growth and economic independence. I'm sure we all together can achieve this, and I am sure all my industry colleagues will do everything possible in their hands going forward. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts.
Thank you, learned panelists. Thank you, Honorable Minister. Thank you, participants. We went up to 100 plus participants. Now, obviously, after 90 minutes, it has come down to 60. Anil, thank you very much. Swati, Kasipa, and I think, Anil, what you finally said about the intellectual property, may I suggest, I think it was to come out in one of the last may I suggest, can we work towards a tech-savvy central intellectual property security force, where horizontal coordination with the help of technology is at the best, and human subjectivity, knee-jerkness goes away, and something which is tech-savvy, and where a corpus can be created by contribution from the big brand owners, and of course, so can ultimately. So this could be the next time when we meet physically, not virtually. We can discuss that, but think about this central intellectual property security force in the line of central, police force with as much as possible the technology around. So with these words, thank you for giving me this opportunity, Cascade, Fiki, Cascade, and all of you. I'm grateful for this opportunity and look forward to better outcomes of what we discussed virtually today. Thank you very much. Thank you, Swati.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Honorable Minister, Deepak Kararon, Madam Mala Banerjee, and all of you, and Anil in particular. Thank you.
I think Mr. Jha is saying something.
Yes, I'll Kashmir, could please unmute Mr. Jha. And thank you on behalf of Fiki Cascade. Thank you, Mr. Pandey, for moderating the session. We indeed had a very insightful panel discussion. For the final concluding remarks,
Deepankar wanted to say something.
No, he just mentioned that Mr. Jha's mic was muted. For the final concluding remarks, may I request Mr. P.C. Jha, Advisor Cascade and former Chairman CBIC, to please make the concluding remarks.
Namaskar, Rajiv. I missed you.
No, actually, I thought that after your final observations, the webinar will come to an end. So because of that, I raised my hand. So actually, as we have found that this webinar has been very lively, very informative. So much of time has been spent about the problem of smuggling in the northeastern part of India. So many aspects which are related to the consumers, and we have also found that Madam Banerjee made a strong plea against all the imports which we get from China. So based on that, one point comes to my mind that we have to go with the slogan of the Prime Minister, that is buy local and be vocal for the local. This is a need of the time, that if our manufacturing sector has to get a boost and there is no alternative to it. We have seen that large number of the migrant labor from the states like Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, they were compelled to leave their workplace and they have gone back to their villages. The number is not less than about 12 million, which is a large number. So there is a need that the manufacturing sector has to come back to production, and in the manufacturing sector also, particularly the MSME sector, that as we find that in any field, those who are large, those who are big, those who are strong, their capacity to absorb the shock is more. But in the case of MSME, which are comparatively small, their capacity to take the shock is less. So they need a special type of the boost, special encouragement. And I feel that was probably in the mind of the Honorable Prime Minister when he said that the people of the country have to change their habit and they have to concentrate more on the goods which are made local. But here I must express a word of caution that we can't go about it in a sentimental way. We have to be practical, we have to be pragmatic, because as we know that the large quantity of our imports are the raw materials, they are semi-finished goods, they are machineries which are required for the manufacturing. So we will have to make a distinction that this call which is there for buying the local has to be limited only in respect of the ready to use goods, the goods which after import they do not need any further value addition, any further production. Those goods we have to buy only such goods which are made in India. So firstly, we have to make a distinction on that point. The second point which I want to make, that so far in the cascade, our message was that our
I think we've lost connectivity to Mr. Jha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Jha, are you there?
No, we've lost the connection.
We've lost the connection. His phone is also not reachable. There's some network issue. So in that case, Mr. Rajput, with your permission, should I wrap up the session?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we've lost connection with Mr. Jha. I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of FICCI